Hello Horror Hounds. It occurred to me recently that I had never seen Dario Argento's first three movies. And likewise, I haven't seen his last, probably the same amount, 3 or 4 movies. And that was all the excuse I needed to decide that the time was ripe to work my way chronologically through Argento's filmography, starting with 1970s directorial debut for Dario Argento, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. It's almost worth reminding yourself as you're watching this movie for the first time that this is Dario Argento's directorial debut, and he's so almost exploding onto the scene fully formed. The Bird with the Crystal Plumage acts like a weird kind of checklist for all things Dario Argento. A creepy lullaby theme tune. In fact, the entire soundtrack by Ennio Morricone has Argento beginning as he means to go on, with memorable, muscular, idiosyncratic scores that are given as much importance as the visual elements of his films. There's an American abroad, tick, who witnesses an act of violence, tick, and becomes embroiled in the police investigation to catch a serial killer, tick. A small detail from what he has witnessed, distorted by memory, proves to be a crucial clue to catching the killer, tick, leading him to be targeted by the killer, tick, who is a black glove clad madman or woman, tick. There are visually stunning set pieces, tick, and a summation at the end that's perfunctory rather than logical. And whilst that is a huge Dario Argentism, I blame Hitchcock for the ending of Psycho, with a psychologist explaining everything. And it's also loosely adapted from a 1949 mystery novel, The Screaming Mimi by Frederick Brown. So it also begins a grand Argento tradition of him claiming sole authorship for works, the provenance of which is more nuanced than the credits of his movies would always have you believe. In The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, the character Sam Dalmas, played by Tony Musante, is an American writer living in Rome. He witnesses an attack on a woman in an art gallery by a mysterious black-gloved assailant dressed in a black raincoat with a black hat. Attempting to reach her, Sam is trapped between two mechanically operated glass doors and sort of becomes trapped in between those and can only watch as the villain makes his escape whilst the stabbed woman crawls along the floor trying to reach him and help. The sequence is the main standout from the film. It arrests you visually, grabs your attention, and instantly marks Dario Argento out as a director with an eye that you want to watch. Whilst the content of the film may not be revolutionary, it's presented with an understanding of the psychology of those who choose to watch a piece of horror. That understanding is perhaps intuitive on Argento's part. It's certainly more subtle and well understood than the psychology he bestows on his long lists of antagonists over the years. But there is definitely at play here a sense that here is a director who knows his audience intimately, almost subconsciously. You like these films, I like these films, I know why you like them, and I'm going to present them to you in ways you've never seen before. As a filmmaker, Argento is only going to grow in confidence, and these visual flourishes would become grander, more complex, more discombobulating as his artistry gains momentum. But the intent is there right from the start, and that is what I find fundamentally amazing about The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. It's quite strange coming to this, his first film, so late in the day, having watched so many of his other films that have developed from this one numerous times. It would be really easy to be a little disappointed in this freshman effort, which seems in a certain light to be perhaps a dry run of themes and visual flair he expanded upon in later inarguably more successful films. But putting this film in context, you have to acknowledge how arrestingly fresh Argento was as a filmmaker right out of the traps. Sure, he didn't invent giallo. That accolade rightly goes to Mario Bava, but what he did with his very first directorial effort is to take Bava's template, incorporate American influences, streamline some of the more lurid and, let's be honest, commercial aspects without losing the art house sensibility. And essentially he repositions and redefines the giallo movie and what it is for the next couple of decades, at least, in one film. What I certainly wasn't ready for was how much of an ultra high-tech thriller it is. I mean, high-tech for 1970. The oscilloscopes and the sound wave analysis, the forensics of the glove. The main policeman has a car phone in 1970. It's possible to see The Bird with the crystal plumage as a progenitor of Michael Mann's superbly stylish, deeply engrossing, clinically forensic Manhunter. And to continue with the Hannibal Lecter link, if you'll allow me, I don't think it's any coincidence that Thomas Harris has his anti-hero, Dr. Lecter, flee to Rome in the novel Hannibal and Ridley Scott's movie of that book. The land of opera and Argento seems like the ideal home for horror's most literary killer and aesthete. Whilst the much lauded Hannibal TV series pushes the aesthetics of violence to unheard of levels, especially for network TV, portraying the interior world of Lecter and the show's various killers as a place of strange and unusual beauty set inside a more mundane visual reality of our everyday humdrum existence. There is something of Argento's aesthetic there, taken to strange and new places. And Argento does have, right from the start, a very well defined aesthetic. It's no coincidence that the first attack we witness in The Bird with the Crystal Plumage takes place in an art gallery. It presents us with a striking tableau that spikily smashes violence and art together in a kind of whirling death spiral that tumbles on throughout the rest of his entire career. Just as our hero is trapped between two glass windows, unable to proceed or retreat, forced to impotently watch the horror that's playing out in front of him, presented as an art piece, it strikes me that this is and always will be our relationship as a viewer with Argento's work. We come for the horror, we come for the violence, and he catches our attention with its bizarreness. He pulls us in and then not only gives us what we think we want, but forces us to watch what he wants us to see. The art of murder, the art of violence. It's an approach that over the years has left him open to accusations of glorifying violence and misogyny. With that, he has shared the critical fate of one of his literary heroes, Edgar Allan Poe. I think charges of glorifying violence and misogyny levelled against Argento miss the mark. They miss the point. To understand his approach, I think it's right to make reference to Edgar Allan Poe, especially his 1845 essay, The Philosophy of Composition, which introduces three of Poe's theories regarding literature, which he expounds upon with reference to his best-known work, The Raven. Length, he believes, the most effective literary works are short. Method, with which Poe dismisses the idea of intuition and inspiration and argues that the creative method is methodological and analytical. And finally, a unity of effect. A work of fiction, Poe says, should only be written after the author has decided how it is to end and which emotional response or effect he or she wishes to create. Once the effect has been determined, the writer should decide all other matters pertaining to the composition, the tone, the theme, the setting, the characters, the conflict, the plot. Now, doesn't all of that, especially the primacy of effect over all other considerations, sound eerily similar to Argento's own approach, which concerns itself much more with inducing a feeling in the viewer than providing a neat, logical story? Something that he's all too often been accused of, summed up as style over substance. It's in this unity of effect section of Poe's essay that he concludes that the death of a beautiful woman is unquestionably the most poetic topic in the world. It's not the full quote, but much like Argento's work, the quote has been used to attack Poe with similar charges of misogyny. There are certainly discussions to be had about Argento's representations of violence, and there are discussions to be had about violence done to women in his works. I don't think it's as cut and dry as saying that Argento is a misogynist. He's quite an equal opportunity horror lover if you take a look at his body of work, and maybe we'll dip back into this theme as we go through his films, but I can easily be challenged with the accusation that Edgar Allan Poe is my favourite author of all time and Dario Argento is quite easily one of my favourite directors of all time. So maybe I'm biased. If you think I am, tell me in the comments below as we go through this guy's filmography, and we will, I'm sure, keep touching upon this subject. Let me know what you think.